Hello all. Hopefully we are live and working and everything is on correctly. Obviously it's been a while since I did one of these, so hopefully there won't be too many gremlins and things in the system and everything will work. I just want to go over my thoughts and opinions on what I saw during last night's Matchroom card. Obviously a box office show that we all had to pay for, and with that already struggling to get my words out because I'm still not sure how I feel about that event as a box office event. When it was first announced, like many other people, I was of the opinion that it shouldn't really be a box office type show. I thought that if it wasn't box office, if it was a regular show, then it would be a great card. But with a headline event of Chisora and Parker, which is not a world title fight, okay, you can also argue that Taylor and Jonas was a co-headline event. I don't know, I think a lot of people felt that it wasn't a box office event. As you've probably heard me say in the past, my own thoughts on it is if I'm already paying a Sky subscription, I shouldn't also have to pay a box office charge on top of that, or it should at least be discounted. But I suppose that's a debate that will rage on for every event that comes our way. So let's have a think then. Where do I want to start with this? I actually think that it was a good night of boxing. I think overall I really thought it was. There was some really good matchups. I think there was a lot more 50-50 element to it, with one or two surprises and upsets along the way. And that's the thing. I think going back to previous comments about whether it's box office or not, a lot of people looked down the card and thought they could predict who was going to win or how the contests were going to go. Again, as I've said in the past, I actually like to be wrong with my boxing predictions. I don't want to be right all the time. I don't want to be correct all the time. If you get more than 50% of your boxing predictions right, let's say you get 60-70% of your boxing predictions correct, what does that say about boxing? It says it's predictable. It's upsets. It's things happening that aren't expected, that get bums on seats, that make people want to watch this sport. So if you can predict what's going to happen in a night, what's the point of watching it? Now that takes us very nicely onto the first match on the card that I saw, which was James Tennyson and Giovanni Straffon. Not many people knew much about Straffon, if anything, coming into this. It's not a name that I'm familiar with at all. But for some reason, I got that same feeling in the pit of my stomach as I had a few weeks back when Carl Frampton last boxed. And I thought, something's not right here. Something is not right here. Maybe this guy Straffon, maybe he's going to bring more to the table than people bargained for. And boy did he. What a hell of a first round. The first round on the card, the first round of the fight, of the fight of the night, of everything. And it was maybe the best round of the night. Possibly. Because that's how long the fight lasted. I think on reflection, Tennyson will look back at it and his team, and they will kind of say to themselves, we should have taken longer to feel this guy out. We should have had a round or two to see what this guy was going to bring to the table, especially if he's an unknown, especially if you can't get much video of him boxing. Maybe go in there and just see what he brings to the table. But Tennyson, and you have to like his style. Me personally, I love the style of the guy. Comes forward, goes to have a fight, wants to impose himself. And obviously he wanted to make a statement last night. Right from the get-go, punches were being traded, like proper big punches. It wasn't jabby, jab, jab, jab. We're talking about big hooks and uppercuts and power shots and what have you. And I think in Tennyson's mind, he was probably thinking, I'm hitting this guy with good shots. Any minute now, there's going to be a chink in the armour. Any minute now, this guy is going to show me something that I've caught him with one. And it didn't happen. Instead, Straffon was happy to trade. And in fact, it was Tennyson that had to take the first step back. It was Tennyson that got sort of wobbled and rocked first. And ultimately, it was a left hook that finished the fight. So, full credit to Straffon. And I think, Eddie Hearn's probably going to want to stay in touch with this guy and maybe start representing him in that, because let's face it, in that division, you've got some big name fighters, people like Tank, Lopez, Haney, all these guys around that weight. And these fights can be made, and they'll be big fights. They're worth a lot of money. And as we know, Eddie Hearn likes a pound note. And during the post-fight interview with Straffon, he alluded to the fact that he'd had a tough life, that he was from quite a hard background. And it's believable, because it's Mexicans, man. They are tough, tough people, and it is a tough, tough country. Growing up in Mexico, I imagine, is not the easiest. Survival of the fittest. And survival out there can be a fight in itself. So he's motivated by bringing home the bacon for his wife and kid, and he's dreaming of big paydays and things like that. And maybe that gets Eddie Hearn's foot in the door with those big fights. So, moving on. What was next? Johnny Fisher, Phil Williams. Johnny Fisher's second fight. I like the look of the guy. I mean, there's not a hell of a lot you can say about a guy in his second professional fight. I don't know if Johnny Fisher is going to go on to be the next world champion. He could be the next Tyson Fury or Anthony Joshua, or he could be the next big thing. Or maybe he won't be. Maybe he'll reach a certain level and things won't work out so great. You have no way of knowing. No way of knowing whatsoever. But I will say, I like the way he holds his hands. I like the way he moves around the ring. I like the way he puts his punches together. Fast hands, real viciousness in the jab. He's got real nasty jab on him. And if you've got that real nasty ramrod jab, which I think you need at heavyweight, he can go places. Phil Williams, to be fair to him, this guy deserves credit. He probably took more punishment than he needed to. He didn't want to get knocked out. He didn't want to get stopped. He wanted to see the final bell. So I give Phil Williams credit, man. I really do. Johnny Fisher just a bit too young, a bit too hungry, and a bit too powerful. I'm really interested to see where he goes with his style. And it's probably not going to be for quite a long time till we see him in a competitive fight. But when it does happen, I think it'll be worth watching. I would love to see a few years down the line, when he's earned his trade a little bit more, Johnny Fisher and someone like Gorman. Fisher versus Gorman. Nathan Gorman. That would be a great fight. You think about the styles. Obviously, Gorman is a little bit further ahead, to say the least, with his career. But give it a few years to marinate. Give it a few years to see what happens. And maybe somewhere down the line, that brawl can happen, and it would be a brawl. It'd be fantastic to watch. So Johnny Fisher, second pro fight. can't really say too much about it. There's not a lot to analyse there. But it's looking promising. Next contest. Dimitri Bivol, Craig Richards. Bivol, I think on paper, going back to what I said right at the beginning, a lot of people looked down the card and they said, oh, it's predictable who's going to beat who, and there's no 50-50 fights and things like that. People wrote off Craig Richards far too early. Far too early. A lot of people thought that Bivol was just going to run straight through him. Obviously, Bivol is seen as a bit of a boogeyman at that weight, at the light heavyweight division. And I think there were elements of it there. Again, the way he moves his feet, the way he puts his punches together, I like Bivol's style a lot. He can really box, and there's plenty of power there, and I think his chin ain't too bad either. I think there is a package there. Obviously, with certain boxers, like if you take Deontay Wilder, you've got punch power. Massive amounts of punch power, but very little else. And some boxers manage to make a career off a certain attribute. When you say Pernell Whitaker, you automatically think defense and how good a defensive fighter he was. When you think of Floyd Mayweather, it's similar to Pernell Whitaker. He's very defensive. When you think Pacquiao, you think hand speed and high work rate. With people like Bivol, he's kind of more of a complete package. I mean, personally for me, I'd say that someone like Canelo maybe at the moment is possibly the most complete package in boxing. Up there, I'd also put Terence Crawford in there as a complete package of a fighter. Got skill, got knockout power, got great defense. So Bivol, as he moves along, it's going to be, he could be in that. He could definitely be seen as a top 10 pound for pounder at some point in the future. So it didn't necessarily bode well for Craig Richards. Richards obviously beat Shakan Pitters. Pitters is what I would class as a local lad to me. I wanted Pitters to win that fight. I was a bit gutted when he didn't. But look, full respect to Craig Richards. He won that fight fair and square. He put in a great game plan and executed it so well. So I honestly believed that Richards could rise to the occasion and give Bivol something to think about. Richards went into that fight believing he could win, which is great. He should. If you start your ring walk thinking, this is going to be a tough night, I'm going to get beat, you're beaten already. Boxers have to go into that ring believing they can win. And I thought Craig Richards boxed a great fight. I really do. I think he was a little bit open for that left hook. Bivol hooking off the jab very, very well. And I thought that shot connected maybe a bit too frequently. But Bivol's real danger shot is that straight right hand, is the backhand. And I thought Craig Richards did a very good job of not giving him that punch. I like Richards' movement. I thought he jabbed well. I thought he used his own backhand well. I think maybe he would regret not going to the body sooner and earlier, because I think he put some work into the body later on in the fight and it was actually a bit more effective. But this was a close competitive fight. Now, I have said in the past, you can have a close competitive fight and at the end of the contest, you could have 12 rounds to 0 on the scorecards. The scorecards do not indicate or give any kind of, they do not tell the story of the fight. They don't. Because if every round is highly contested, but one boxer just seems to edge each round, then it would be scored as a 12-0 fight. And you'd look at the scorecard and you'd say it was a shutout. It doesn't tell the story of each and every round. And I said on Twitter, I tweeted quite a lot during this contest. And people were saying, I read someone say, Bivol isn't out of second gear. If that was the case, then Bivol's coach needs to give him a slap. Because surely, if Bivol could have knocked Richards out last night, he'd have done it at any point. If he wasn't out of second gear, he should have been. It wasn't. Bivol himself, after the fight, said that Craig Richards gave him things to think about. It was a much more tactical and difficult fight. So I don't think Craig Richards has got anything embarrassed or ashamed about or anything like that. The guy should have his head up. The guy should absolutely have his head up. There's other big fights out there for Craig Richards. Craig Richards had proved last night he is not out of his depth at this level. I wish the guy all the best. Good fight. Competitive. Engaging. I think the right man won. Don't get me wrong. Bivol, I'm not trying to say that Craig Richards should have won the fight. I think that Richards did some good stuff. There just perhaps wasn't enough of it. But it wasn't the shutout people believed it was going to be. So both of them, bright career ahead. I think Bivol is definitely someone to watch out for, and it could easily be appearing in people's top 10 pound for pound lists and all that sort of thing. I think he'll be in the debate of that if he isn't already. Okay. Chris Eubank Jr. versus Marcus Morrison. Oh my God, where do I start with this? Where the hell do I start with this? This was one of the strangest things I've seen recently. I have to say recently because obviously we live in a time. I still remember a guy with a fan strapped to his back parachuting into the ring during a heavyweight title contest. So I can't say that Chris Eubank Jr.'s performance was the strangest thing that I've ever seen in boxing, because that would be a complete lie. We have seen some very, very strange things happen in this sport. But that being said, his performance, I still found it quite strange. I found it odd. On Friday night, I think it was, I was on the panel for Pep Talk UK. If you're not subscribed to Pep Talk UK, make sure you subscribe to Pep Talk UK, because it's nearly every week I'm on Pep Talk UK on the panel discussing boxing. So if you're into the live discussion, that sort of thing, make sure you subscribe to Pep Talk, hit the notification bell and all that sort of good stuff, and join us for the live panel on that, because it's always interesting. But I said on that panel, Chris Eubank Jr. needs to make a statement. New coach, been out the ring a while. He needs to make a statement. He is in the years of his career now, age-wise and the number of fights he's had. If he is going to have the big defining fight against someone like Golovkin, Andrade, however you want to pronounce it, even Canelo, if Eubank Jr. is going to have these big fights, it's now. It's over the next couple of years. I mean, he's already had big contests. George Groves, obviously, that was a big contest. That was a world-class contest. It was a world title fight and part of a massive tournament. So Chris Eubank Jr. has been at a high level, and that was at super middleweight as well. He needed to make a statement. And I said what I would like to see from Chris Eubank Jr. is a workmanlike performance. Show us the improvements that you've made with Roy Jones Jr. Because we all the things that Eubank Jr. needed to work on were pretty damn obvious. The jab. Did not have a good enough jab in terms of speed and frequency of it, power of it, use of it. Come on, I mean, we all know, even people who, you know, aren't necessarily coaches or boxers, people who have been watching this sport for a long time, even if they've not participated in it in any way, shape or form, your general boxing fan knows how important the jab is, because the commentary team talk about it all the time. The boxers themselves talk about it all the time. It is so important because everything comes off it. It's a defensive punch. It's an aggressive attacking punch. It's a range-finding punch. It sets everything up. It really does. Everything works off the jab, and there's a reason for that. It's tried and tested and proven. You need to have a good jab if you're going to fight at world level. So we needed to see that. Footwork, head movement. We needed to see better, because at times I think Eubank Jr. has looked a little bit slow at closing the gap. George Groves outmaneuvered him that way. Going all the way back to the Billy Joe Saunders fight. Billy Joe Saunders, great movement. Chris Eubank Jr. had trouble closing the gap and cutting the ring off. So we need to see quicker feet from that point of view. And also head movement. Must be moving the head. Now that said, the first bell goes for round one, ding ding. Two boxers come out to the centre ring, and the very first punch thrown, Marcus Morrison throws a really nice stiff jab, and it hits Eubank square in the face. And that was like the first, it's like ding ding, walk to the middle, pop. And because there's no crowd there or anything, you just heard the smack of it bouncing off Eubank Jr.'s face. And straight away I was like, ooh, oh dear, this is not going to go particularly well. Now, when I say that, I don't mean that I was thinking, oh, here we go, Marcus Morrison's going to cause a big upset and beat this guy. I wasn't necessarily thinking that. But straight away, the alarm bells are ringing, and I'm thinking, is this a new and improved Chris Eubank Jr.? And then they settle into round one, and Junior's holding his hands in a very strange way. Now, I know in professional boxing there are a lot of very varied ways of holding your hands. I mean, personally, I like, call me old school, call me a traditionalist, I like to see a nice high right hand, and I like to see the left hand up as well, protecting the face, and a nice tight, you could call it European style maybe if you want to, but again, there's a reason why that is good, or there's a reason why when a boxer first walks into an amateur gym, that is how they are shown to hold their hands. I don't know of a boxing club where when you first walk in the gym, they say, oh, well, what you're going to do, I want you to have your left hand down by your knee and your right hand's going to be on your chest, and you're going to do this with your shoulder to block shots. No one starts boxers off that way. That is developed over a long period of time. You have to learn the rules before you can break them. Now, it was all, I mentioned this on Twitter. Eubank Jr. is holding his hands in quite a strange manner. The right hand was kind of here, sort of thing. Yes, Roy Jones used to do that. He used to kind of do this. The left hand was out somewhere. Now, straight away, the replies that I got on Twitter was, he's trying to be Roy Jones Jr. He's trying to do a Roy. And I understand that. But here's the problem. That style suited Roy Jones Jr. Roy Jones Jr. was a hell of an amateur. He went to the Olympics, and the only reason why he didn't get a gold medal was they had to shaft him for it. That's a well-known story. And I think he got a silver medal, and they still gave him Boxer of the Tournament, which is the ultimate slap in the face after shafting the guy over the gold medal. But look, Roy learned the traditional way and then adapted and developed his own style to suit his physiology. The reason why Roy was able to hold his hands in the manner that he did, he had very long arms. He could use his arms as a rangefinder. I think it was... I can't remember the boxer's name now. And it's embarrassing because my dad taught him and his brothers when they were at school. It'll come to me. It'll come to me at some point. But people have said that when you think you're out of range, Richie Woodall said, you think you're out of range, and then Roy will whip round a left hook, a very long left hook, or he'll come in with the straight right hand. Roy used his arms out at length like that. He was judging distance on people, and he knew when they came into a certain range of his hands, he could let them go like that. And it kind of let him down a little bit later on in his career as he slowed down. Obviously, with Tarver was a long range fighter, taller than Roy, long arms, and it was more difficult for him to judge the distance. Also, obviously, he'd been up to heavyweight to fight John Ruiz, come down and had real problems making 175 again. Roy, that style is only going to suit boxers of Roy Jones' physiology and ability. Eubank Jr. does not have those long arms. He doesn't have the speed or power of Roy Jones Jr. Because that's the other thing. From that stance of holding your hands there, Roy could still knock people out. He could really damage people either with the left hook or the straight right hand. After what I saw against Morrison last night, I don't think Eubank Jr. has that power or anywhere near that power. I love the way Eubank Jr. puts his punches together. And don't get me wrong, Eubank Jr. is a hell of a talent. I've always said Eubank Jr. is a hell of a talent. I love the way he puts his punches together. When he gets someone on the ropes and goes to work, he is like a force of nature. He really is. But that's the area of his game that I think they need to cultivate and then base a strategy around that and develop his own style. Eubank Jr. spent God knows how many years of his career emulating his father, and now he's emulating Roy Jones Jr. Chris, just be yourself, man. Develop your style. Be you. So that was weird. That was strange. Then, obviously, Morrison, I think Marcus Morrison deserves plenty of respect because he could have got out of there numerous times in that fight. I think even during the 7th round, I think it was Joe Gallagher was saying, I'm going to pull you out unless you show me something. And Morrison went out there and showed him something. I still think Eubank Jr. was too easy to hit. I still think there's a lot of room for improvement on his head movement. I think Roy Jones mentioned that in the commentary. I mean, Roy obviously said, look, I told him to get the rounds. And that's why when Eubank had Morrison on the ropes, he stepped off a couple of times. But still, I'm not sure that was it. With the punches thrown and landed, if Eubank Jr. was a bigger puncher, that fight would have been stopped. There was actually quite a nasty point. Might have been round 8, might have been that round 7, where Eubank had Morrison back, put in a whole salvo of punches, and you just saw the blood splatter from Morrison, from his nose, I think, and it was all up the ring post. It was quite brutal to watch. So look, don't get me wrong, Chris Eubank Jr., when he puts those shots together, it's brutal. It really is brutal. How's he going to fare at world level? He wants Golovkin. I don't think he has the power to keep Golovkin off. You think about how How you'd beat Golovkin, I think you either have to do it over 12 rounds where you have very good feet, where you can move and stay away from him and have a very good jab, and where you can pop that out and use that. Power-wise, though, you have to remember when Canelo fought Golovkin, well, twice. You look at the shots that Canelo hit Golovkin with. It didn't dissuade him from coming forward. Didn't stun him, wobble him, or anything like that. So if Canelo, putting everything he can behind shots, could not dissuade Golovkin from coming in, I don't see how Chris Eubank Jr. does it. And as I said previously, I don't think Chris Eubank Jr. has the best feet in the world. So I don't know how he does that either. And when you look at Andrade, good jab, awkward style, good feet. I don't know. I'd love to hear your comments. Please let me know what you think of this. Where Chris Eubank Jr. goes. Do you think he's improved under Roy? I think Roy has worked well with him. I think he has developed a jab, which is good. But for everything that they've improved, I think other flaws have opened up, namely with defense and head movement and that sort of thing. So I could probably talk about this for a long, long time. I thought it was a bizarre thing to watch. Again, it wasn't particularly workmanlike. There was Chris Eubank Jr. trying to showboat and mess about. That comes later. That comes when you're actually dominating opponents in a manner that Roy Jones used to. Roy Jones used to firmly get the upper hand in a contest before he started doing all the chicken strut and all that sort of thing. But there you go. Moving on. By the way, just before I move on to the next part, I noticed there's a couple of comments in the live chat. Thank you very much for all the real nice comments put in there. Lentner3, Hunky121, Nathan Y. Nathan Y says, haha, stop teasing us with a comeback and then disappearing for months. Nathan, man, I haven't disappeared for months. I put up a thing on my channel saying I'm back. And I told you, go over to Pep Talk UK. I've been on Pep Talk UK nearly every week since January. Talking boxing with other panellists. And also, tomorrow night, about 7 p.m, I believe I'm going to be on Lady Chan's channel as well. Go and check out Lady Chan. Feisty person. Loves an argument. Loves a debate. Real steamroller of a person. Do not get on the wrong side of her. So the thing is, I think I'll be giving thoughts and opinions on her channel to do with all this tomorrow night. So that could be a very interesting conversation. So if any of you guys are about tomorrow, 7 o'clock, Lady Chan, Dundem Season, that's her channel. Make sure you go and check it out. And join us in the live chat tomorrow. Where am I at then? Campbell Hatton, Levi Dunn. Again, like with the Johnny Fisher, Phil Williams fight, what can I really comment on? This is Campbell Hatton's second pro fight. Now, personally, I don't think it should have been this high up the bill. I think they could easily have swapped Bivol Richards with Hatton Dunn. I think that would have made a lot more sense on the card. But hey, what do I know? You know, I'm just saying, you know, Campbell Hatton, he's young. He's a young guy, young kid. I'm old enough now that I can call people in their early 20s kids. I am that old. So why are we putting him so high up on this card? Most people Campbell Hatton's age that turn pro in the second pro fight, they're not on TV. They're in small hall shows and things like that. So it's so much pressure. I mean, the fact that he was on the Dillian White card, which was this is the second box office event that Campbell Hatton has been on. It's mad, really is. And I just think that it's just unnecessary pressure to put on him. But I understand completely why Eddie Hearn's doing it. Eddie Hearn is building a star. That's it. Okay, same with Chris Eubank Jr. You can and Conor Benn. If it wasn't for his name, he wouldn't be there. Absolutely, we all know that. That's not saying the quiet part loud. We all know that as it is. And basically, when you have the son of a legend, be it Ben or Eubank Hatton, that's worth a hell of a lot of money if you can bring that boxer along and recreate the success of the parent. It's a hard task. So, I mean, was Campbell Hatton any better than what? I mean, was it barely a month ago he was last in the ring? I mean, he didn't look as tired by the end of the fight. I think he probably paced himself better. I think there's a mountain of stuff for them to work on. I mean, the most obvious thing for me was he has his hands high, which is good. Don't get me wrong. I mean, rather his hands be higher than them around his waist. I think that's good. But there was a hell of a lot opening down the body. I'd just like to see him a little bit more tucked in. But, you know, his trainer, which is also his uncle Matthew, his dad as well, they're going to say this to him. Because the thing is, with Ricky Hatton, he did tuck up quite well. I know people say, oh, Ricky Hatton was easy to hit. You know, he always marked up. His face always looked like a pizza at the end of a tough fight. But to be fair to him, that was because he was so attack-minded. He did actually cover up nicely. He was nicely tucked in through, you know, that's his stance. Was generally more orthodox, traditional stance, boxing stance. So, look, there's a mountain of stuff to work on with Campbell Hatton, and they're going to work on it. And he's got time, because Eddie Hearn is not going to risk him anytime soon. He's building this star of the future. So, someone on Twitter the other day, make sure you're following me on Twitter, by the way, because I do tweet a lot about boxing and things. Someone said, how many fights do we give Campbell Hatton before we make an assessment of him? I said at least 15. 15 to 20. Look at Conor Benn. We're only just finding out how good Conor Benn is now, or what his potential is now. And it's going to be the same with Campbell Hatton. It's going to be 15, 20 fights. It's going to be 3 years, maybe more, before we can really assess how he's coming on. I think he'll improve loads. I really do. I think, you know, with the family around him, his uncle, his dad, I don't see how he cannot progress. And he also seems to love the sport. He seems to love boxing. He seems to want to be there, and he wants to get better. So, you know, I know... Again, a lot of people are going to be panning him or giving him a load of abuse. But these are people that have never stepped in a boxing ring and probably never achieved anything in their lives. So, anyway, that's Campbell Hatton, Levi Dunn. Not a hell of a lot to say on it. It's gonna take a lot longer and a lot more fights before I formulate a proper analysis or opinion on Campbell Hatton. I wish him all the best. I mean, how much of an arsehole have you got to be to not wish a young boxer all the best? I hope Campbell Hatton becomes a world champion. I hope he recreates his dad's success. I hope he goes to Las Vegas and boxes for... Because I'll be there. I want an excuse to go to Vegas. The more British boxers that get over to Vegas, the better, because then I get to go and buy a ticket and go and watch these things. Someone in the comments, Nathan Y, shout out to Straffon. I made a healthy raise betting on him. I don't recommend betting or gambling to anyone, by the way. I don't gamble or bet on boxing myself. But well done, Nathan, who made a healthy profit betting on him. Eddie needs to stop bringing over these unknown Mexicans who are game as anything. Well, I don't think it's not necessarily Eddie. You do know that Matchroom is a pretty big company. While Eddie Hearn is the face of it, I'm fairly sure he has a whole team dedicated to matchmaking. He's not doing. It's too much work for one person to do to matchmake all of these people. You know, there is a team involved, and I mean, look, you could say, oh well, Eddie needs to fire whoever made that match. You have to remember, Eddie Hearn is a clever guy. You can hate him as much as you want, but business-wise, he's very business savvy. He doesn't lose because Straffon beats Tennyson. So you could say, oh, that's a headache for Eddie Hearn. Not really, because Eddie Hearn then just says, okay, right, we'll sign up Straffon and we'll get behind him and he leads us to the world stage that way. Whether Tennyson wins or Straffon wins, Eddie Hearn wins. That's good business sense. Really is. That's how you do it. You know? And I mean, it's going to be the same with Canelo and Billy Joe Saunders. Any outcome to that fight is a good outcome for Eddie Hearn, to be quite honest. Anyway, Katie Taylor, Tasha Jonas. I thought this was a great fight. I thought this was a really good fight. It lived up to the hype, the billing. I thought Katie Taylor a little bit slow out of the blocks. But once she got going, second, third round, started putting the punches together, using the speed, I thought she was looking dangerous, you know. It was the perfect example of speed versus timing. And you could maybe put timing and power. Tasha Jonas did not have the work rate. Katie Taylor was speed and work rate. Tasha Jonas didn't have the speed and work rate to stand with her. So she used timing and power and tried to be more precise and accurate. And it made for a fascinating contest as it progressed. Again, I think possibly Tasha Jonas may look back at it and say, you know what, we should have gone to the body a bit earlier. We should have really gone for it, you know, downstairs. It was a close fight. It was a very competitive fight. I'd like to see a rematch. I think Tasha Jonas deserves a rematch. Whether that'll happen or not too sure. But as we know, women's boxing it's almost in its infancy in the televised professional format. So there's not a deep talent pool yet. There's not a lot of fights for Katie Taylor to have out there that are going to bring in big revenue. So 2 or 3 fights with Tasha Jonas, business-wise, makes sense. Because where else are you going to get a competitive opponent for Katie Taylor that is going to draw in big money? So I think we'll see these. I think we'll see these two box again at least one more time. If Tasha Jonas wins another one, then obviously wins the next one, I should say. It will obviously be a 3-fight thing. So Tasha Jonas had her moments in that fight. She hurt Katie Taylor a few times. Again, when I was on Pep Talk on Friday night, I said, if I was the coach of Tasha Jonas, the game plan that I would be working would be to get Katie Taylor to walk onto that backhand, that big left, that big straight left. If you can do that, you're going to cause a lot of damage. And she managed to do it once or twice. There were a couple of moments for Katie Taylor which were not the best. Katie Taylor, obviously, you combat a southpaw with the left hook over the top of the southpaw jab. And you look for the straight right of your own. And Katie Taylor had plenty of success with those 2 punches as well. Going down the last few rounds, it really was anyone's fight. But I think Katie Taylor just had a little bit more left in the tank. Tasha Jonas, I think fitness just came into it, didn't it? And Katie Taylor just showed that she had that bigger engine. So, again, it was close. Not necessarily close enough to say that Tasha Jonas won, and fair play to Tasha Jonas and Joe Gallagher. They were very gracious in defeat and very, they said the right person won. But it was still a very competitive and engaging contest as it went on. And all the people that said that this was a really crap box office card because it was all predictable, okay, you can say, well, Taylor won, Hatton won, Eubank won, Bivol won, Fisher won, Tennyson didn't, Straffon did. The favourites to win in the majority, well, Parker won as well, we're going to get onto that. The favourites to win in the majority, the vast majority won, but it was nowhere near as straightforward. It was nowhere near the walkover. There wasn't any, you could maybe, taking Johnny Fisher and Campbell Hatton's fights aside, because let's face it, they were kind of walkovers, they weren't particularly competitive because it was the second fight for both boxers. You could maybe make an argument that Chris Eubank Jr.'s fight against Morrison, that was a walkover, but I still think Morrison was probably a bit more competitive than people thought he was going to be. Let's move on. Derek Chisora, Joseph Parker, top of the bill. It happened. We actually got Derek Chisora to walk first and come to the ring. And obviously, we were told it was because his mum told him off and told him to get on with it and do it, so he did. Not that I would say any of these things to Derek Chisora's face, because, to be honest, the guy scares me quite a lot from what I've seen, because he's so damn unpredictable. But, man, predictability. Derek Chisora is kind of turning into one of these guys in the boxing ring. You know what he's going to do, but stopping him from doing it is a hell of a task. And Joseph Parker found that out. They knew, the Parker team knew that Derek Chisora was going to bum rush him. From the opening bell, Chisora was going to get down, get his head down, get his chin down, march forward, throw big, nasty punches, go at the body, get the head involved there, just have a real fight. A real tear up. That's what Derek Chisora does. You know he's going to do it, and you can have all the hours in the gym going, well, look, what we're going to do, we're going to pop in with the jab, we'll step off, we'll create space. You can do all this in the gym, but when you've actually got a guy like Chisora, force of nature, putting it on you, it's very, very different. And the other thing as well, I said about maybe around 3 or 4, Parker's probably waiting for Derek to sort of burn off some of this, adrenaline and energy. And I tell you what, man, it wasn't till round 8, round 9 that Chisora really started to slow a bit, where, he's breathing heavily in the corner. You saw Chisora breathing heavy in the corner, and you're thinking, oh, he's knackered now. And then as the bell rings, he gets off his stool, the bell rings, and it's like that Derek Chisora sat on his stool breathing heavy, that guy just leaves. And it's War Chisora takes over, and the heavy breathing stops, and he just goes out and does it again for another 3 minutes. Joseph Parker down in the first round. I thought it was a trip to begin with because of the camera angle and where it was. Obviously, with the replays, it was a pretty legit knockdown. It was a legitimate knockdown. It was a sort of clubbing shot on the head. It wasn't round the back of the head. It was a fair shot. And I think that took everyone by surprise. Definitely took Joseph Parker by surprise. He got up and he looked a little bit, well, this wasn't part of the plan. This wasn't in the script. And straight away, if you have a game plan where you say, okay, this guy's going to come out real fast and throw a whole load of stuff at me, we'll give him the first 5 rounds. But then, after round 5, we put our foot on the gas, take over, maybe even stop him later on. It's a risky, dangerous game plan to have. But straight away, if you're down in the first round, that game plan's ruined because you're 2 points down on the scorecards. So the other thing is as well, you can't just give 5 rounds to the other guy. You've got to make him work for those 5 rounds. If you just give him the 5 rounds, he's not going to be knackered when you get into the later rounds when you want to start working. If you're going to give him 5 rounds, you need him blowing out of his arse by the 6th. So you need to go at the body. You need to lean on him. You need to frustrate him. Okay, if you're going to give him 5 rounds, fine. But make sure he gives you something. He gives you part of himself, his energy, his heart, his lungs. Take something away from him. And fortunately, Joseph Parker didn't. Not enough anyway. As the fight wore on, as I've said, Chisora got more and more tired. Parker, when he got some space and let his hands go, looked decent. There were some good straight shots, some good combos going in there. A couple of nice bent arm shots as well. But by the time the final bell went, I'm thinking, has Parker really done enough? Because I'm giving Chisora the majority of the first 6 or 7 rounds. I am going to go back and score this again at some point. Whether I do another video on it, I'm not too sure, because by the time I've scored it and done another video and said, oh, hey, here's what my scorecard said, obviously people are going to be talking about different things. We're going to be onto new subjects and bouts and things like that by then. But just for my own personal entertainment, I might go back, watch this again and score it again just to see what I think. Because whilst I wasn't scoring it, as I said, it got to the final bell and I just thought, I don't think Parker's done enough here. Not when Chisora has got a knockdown in the first round and I give him the majority of the first 6 or 7. No, let's be honest. The first majority of the first 7 rounds I'd give to Chisora. So I don't blame Derek for being upset, to say the least. I have seen worse robberies in boxing. We all have. But this is borderline robbery. It's borderline. I think Del Boy deserved to win that. And I understand the implications of it. Because if Derek Chisora beats Parker, that causes quite a shake-up in the heavyweight division. Because Chisora's meant to be the guy that gives you a tough fight, but you win. If you're a world-class title challenger boxer, Chisora is the guy that you beat. He gives you a tough fight. Yeah, you have a good dust-up with him, just like Usyk was under pressure from him. White obviously had had 2 tear-ups with him. Chisora is the guy that makes you work, gives you a tough night of it, but you beat him and then you move on into that higher level where you fight other high-level boxers, people like White, Povetkin, Pulev, Wilder, Fury, AJ, Takam. Well, saying that, Chisora obviously beat Takam. And this is what kind of keeps Chisora relevant, because he beats these people, or, you know, he has a habit of pulling the odd one out of the bag, like the Takam one. That really did rescue his career at the time. And I think that Chisora is going to be about for a good few, at least another year, because Joseph Parker, Andy Lee, said we'll give Derek a rematch, and it could be the next fight both of them have, would be a rematch. Eddie Hearn says fair enough, because people have paid box office for it once. It was a decent competitive brawl. People will probably pay box office it again. So it's quite an easy one to make, and it's easy money. You've just got to look at who you're going to put on the undercard of it. Although saying that, it was mentioned It said, Eddie, can you put this on the undercard of AJ Fury? That'd be an interesting one. I don't know if there's enough time, because the rumour, or the strong rumour what Eddie Hearn has put out, is that maybe we get a Fury AJ announcement this week. So we'll have to see what the date is. Be an interesting one to put on the undercard of that. But I think Joseph Parker will feel that his luck was in last night. He should do. Joseph Parker's an interesting one, because I do remember back in the day, before he fought Anthony Joshua, when Anthony Joshua was maybe at 14, 15 fights, Joseph Parker was seen as a real dangerous man in the division. He was knocking people out. You know, he showed power, he showed hand speed. He doesn't have the same air of being that guy anymore. Unfortunately for him, he needs to re-establish himself as a guy you don't want to get in there with. I don't think he's that particularly off-putting anymore. Performance against White, he looked a bit flat. The fight against Farr was not good. Joseph Parker needs a good performance, like now. He needed it last night, and he didn't put it in. Right now, Joseph Parker is the guy who got very, very lucky. A dubious decision against Derek Chisora. That is not a good position to be in if you want a title fight or something like that. Derek Chisora, though, he'll get to box again. I mean, he's already said that he's not particularly bothered about title fights or anything like that. Derek Chisora is getting his money in for his retirement, and I don't blame him. I think he's sensible. Get as much money as you can out of this game, and then hopefully you leave with your health and faculties intact. And then, you know, he's got kids. You get to spend the rest of your days with your kids, having a nice time with them, and you can pay for as many trips to Disneyland as they want. I think that's quite a nice thought and nice idea. So, those are my immediate thoughts from the card last night. It was entertaining. Make sure you tell me down below what you thought of it. Did you have a good night in? Are you having a good weekend? Nice sunny Sunday on a bank holiday weekend. I've got to go and pick up the wife in a bit. I've been talking for about an hour. Again, huge shout out to everyone. A few people in the live chat who have put messages in there and contributed. Thank you very much, guys. I really, really appreciate it. There's more to come from this channel. I promise you. I have plans. There are things that we are going to do on this channel. So stay tuned. But look, tomorrow night, I think I'll be talking about this again on Lady Chan's channel. Lady Chan Dundem season. Go over there and, drop her a comment, watch a video, say, Benj sent me here. I should be talking about this with her, and of course Pep Talk UK, and of course my channel. Make sure you like and hit the subscribe and the notification. Make sure you hit the like, subscribe, and notification bell. It's been an absolute pleasure just to sit back and chat with you all for an hour. But have a great bank holiday weekend. Thanks very much for watching. See you all again soon. Take care. Goodbye.